All right, these notes are going to go into your HBS course file. I have a post-it note for the skeletal system. I have post-it notes for all the organ systems. That helps me to get right to the organ system that I'm looking at. Functions of the skeletal system. Okay, functions or jobs of the skeletal system: support and protection, movement. Skeletal system works with the muscular system to move our body, mineral storage, and making blood cells. All right, so we talked about the cellular organization of living things, and one portion of it is cell build. Same types of cells build tissue, different types of tissue create the organ, different organs working together make the organ system. All right, so our skeletal system is the same. We have a specialized cell in the skeletal system, osteocytes. Tissue, spongy bone, compact bone. The organ would be the humerus. So a bone is considered an organ because it's made of different types of tissues working together. So one example of an organ of the skeletal system would be the humerus bone. And organ system, of course, is the skeletal system. All right, types of bones. First of all, we have flat bones. These bones are thin. They're like a plate or sheet. Flat bones are going to protect internal organs. So examples of flat bones are the bones that protect the brain, the heart, the pelvic organs. So the skull protects the brain, sternum and ribs protect the heart, ilium and ischium protect the pelvic organs. Long bones. Let me see if I can fix this lighting. There, that looks a little bit better, I think. All right. Long bones support body weight and allow for movement. So examples of long bones are the humerus, the radius, the ulna, femur, and even the phalanges. So phalanges are smaller long bones in our fingers and toes, but they are still in that category. Short bones. These bones are boxy and cube-shaped. They provide stability. And some examples of short bones are the tarsals in our ankles, the carpals in our wrist. And then finally, irregular bones. These are going to vary in shape, size, and structure. And they usually, they can have a complex shape. Some examples of irregular bones are our vertebrae and our sacrum. Okay, so you probably recognize this as a negative feedback loop. Figure 8, infinity, negative feedback loop. So as you have a stimulus, body responds to get things moving in the opposite direction. Stimulus move things in the opposite direction. So when we're talking about bones, we have a calcium feedback loop. So if you eat something, you have a meal, especially one that has calcium in it, your blood calcium levels are going to rise. That's going to be picked up, and that's information is going to be picked up by sensors in your body, and so that's going to stimulate your thyroid gland to release calcitonin. So thyroid gland is activated and calcitonin is released. Now, calcitonin is going to affect a couple different things. Calcitonin is going to affect our bones, and it's going to affect our kidneys. For our kidneys, it's going to instruct your kidneys to reduce uptake. So don't keep pulling the calcium out of the blood and bringing it back into the body. We'll get rid of that within our urine waste. For the bones, it's going to stimulate the bones to store that calcium. Specifically within the bones, the osteoblasts build bone. So specifically within the bones, osteoblasts are going to pick up that calcium and put it into the bone matrix. So osteoblasts will have calcium reabsorption. So now that we're getting rid of some of that calcium in our waste and we're storing it in our bones, our blood calcium levels are going to drop. We're not constantly eating, so in between meals, our blood calcium levels might drop too low. So sensors in the body are going to pick that up, and that's going to stimulate your parathyroid gland, and the parathyroid gland is going to release PTH, parathyroid hormone. So parathyroid gland releases PTH, which has a few effects. First, that PTH hormone, that hormone is going to tell the small intestines to increase uptake. So as food is going through your digestive system, pull more calcium from the food into the body. That PTH is going to stimulate the kidneys to also increase uptake, so don't get rid of it in the liquid waste or the solid waste. And the PTH is going to stimulate the bones to release calcium. So within the bones, we specifically have osteoclasts. Osteoclasts are going to release that calcium. They're going to break down bone and release calcium. So now that we're having more pulled in from our food, we're not getting rid of it in our liquid waste, and we're releasing it from storage in our bones, then the blood calcium levels are going to rise. All right, so now we're looking at a bone and the different features of a bone. So we've got some of these numbered here, and I've put information about those underneath. All right, so number 1 right here, this is the proximal epiphysis. So proximal means closer to the joint. Number 3, that's the distal epiphysis. An epiphysis is the end of a long bone. Proximal is closer to the joint, the part of attachment. Distal is furthest away. Number 7, we're looking at this part right here. That's the diaphysis, and that's the body of the long bone. So epiphysis are the ends, diaphysis is the body. Number 11, and so that's going to indicate this general part right here, and we'll look at an x-ray that's going to show it a little bit better. But that's our growth plate, our epiphyseal line. Number 5 and number 10 are showing cartilage. So here's cartilage right here, and then cartilage, this would be the white stuff on the outside of the bone. So this is the layer on the outside of the bone. So cartilage is a type of tissue. It's holding the bone together. It protects that bone, especially where there's a joint, allows for movement and cushions those joints during that movement and absorbs shock. So when we've got these bones that are rubbing together at a joint, that cartilage helps to protect and help to cushion that joint. All right, number 9, it's this hole, this space in the middle. That's the medullary cavity, and yellow marrow is located in the medullary cavity, so the location of the yellow marrow. Number 2, periosteum. So basically it's just showing the outside, the outer covering of that bone. So it's a membrane that protects the bone. Periosteum is a membrane that protects the bone. Number 8 is showing us where we would find spongy bone. So this would be spongy bone. Number 4 is showing us where we would find compact bone. So this right here, this would be our compact bone. All right, periosteum. We've got a little better definition of periosteum from number 2 here. Membrane / tissue that covers the bone. Okay, so osteocytes, osteobone sites having to do with cells. So osteocytes are bone cells. We have osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts build up bone. So that helps me to remember when I'm thinking, okay, I've got osteoblast, osteoclast, which builds bone. Osteoblast builds up bone. Osteoclast breaks down bone. So clast, collapse. Honestly, if you can remember blast, then you know clast is going to be the opposite of it. And one more term to throw in there, hyperphagia. We've looked at hypertonic means more solute. Hypertrophy means we've got more muscle tissue in the heart, like left ventricular hypertrophy. Hyperplasia. So now we're going to have an excess in formation of cells. Excess in formation, especially cells. So if we have hyperphagia, then that hyperplasia, then that's building up excess of cells. And some dysfunctions of bone can lead to hyperplasia. All right, now we're going to look at the 2 types of bone. So first, this is compact bone. And so I've opened up to 2 pages side by side, and all of this information is compact bone at the top, and then spongy bone at the bottom. So I put compact bone on both sides, and I highlighted it and boxed it in so I knew what I had going on here. All right, compact bone. Compact bone is a matrix of mineral salts, especially calcium and phosphorus, and protein fibers like collagen. So it's a matrix of mineral salts, calcium and phosphorus, and protein fibers like collagen. So mineral salts can withstand squeezing, so they can withstand compression pressure. And collagen fibers have great tensile strength, so they can endure stretching. And so that's why bones are so strong and durable, because the mineral salts are able to withstand the compression pressure, the squeezing pressure, and collagen's able to withstand the stretching pressure, the tensile pressure. There are only tiny spaces, lacunae, for osteocytes. So within this matrix, we have these little tiny spaces, these little lacunae, where the osteocytes are at. Okay, so compact bone. Now we're going to look at the structures of compact bone. So I have these numbered. Here's number 1. Oops, I lost number 2. Oh, wait, I think I know. Yes, I highlighted it. So these are number 2 right here. Number 3 and number 4 are these little wiggly lines. All right, so number 1, we're looking at this section right here. So that unit, that component is called an osteon. So this is our osteon, this part right here. And so osteons are cylinders, functional unit of compact bone. Number 2, that was what I had highlighted. Number 2, I had highlighted yellow. These are our osteocytes, or our bone cells. So remember, they're in the lacunae. They're in their tiny little spaces within the bone. So I highlighted these guys yellow, just to give an example of some osteocytes. Number 3, Haversian canal. And so it's the little black hole, basically, and I highlighted it yellow to associate it with this term. The Haversian canal is where blood vessels and nerves run through that bone. So this is our Haversian canal. That's what I highlighted orange, Haversian canal, Haversian canal. Number 4, yeah, I guess I need that too. Number 4, because I drew those little wavy lines on there, that's the canaliculi. Canaliculi. So all of these, especially the terms in HBS, I put my own personal pronunciation guides on there so that I know how they're pronounced. So canaliculi. So these are gap junctions. They allow nutrients and small molecules to pass between the osteocytes. So these are little places where nutrients can be exchanged in between our osteocytes. So that's the ones that I just drew on right here. I just added those little lines on there to give myself something visual. All right, the bottom, we've got spongy bone. So spongy bone, and then I boxed the whole thing in so I knew where I was at. Characteristics of spongy bone. It is very porous. Spongy, porous, makes sense. There is lots of vascular tissue, blood vessels that run through spongy bone. All right, lattice-like matrix of thin columns or plates of bone. Trabeculae. So it's like a lattice, kind of crosswork, honeycomb kind of structure. It's a matrix of thin columns or plates of bone. So this is the harder structure. The osteocytes are going to sit in the lacunae, cavities. Erythropoiesis. Erythropoiesis is the production of red blood cells, of erythrocytes. So erythropoiesis is going to occur in our spongy bone marrow. Erythropoiesis is the production of red blood cells. All right, so we've got our spongy bone here. Picture of our spongy bone. Oh, yeah, I did. Let's do that first. Sorry. Forgot I had that on the back. Okay, so this top part represents red marrow. The bottom part represents yellow marrow. So both of these are spongy. This is red marrow, spongy bone. This is yellow marrow, spongy bone. So red marrow is going to be a type of spongy bone that's found in your flat bones, like the hip, sternum, and ribs. Red marrow is also found in the epiphyseal ends of a long bone. Yellow marrow is found in the medullary cavity of long bones. Okay, so red marrow. Red marrow contains hematopoietic stem cells. These are stem cells that can specialize into different types of blood cells. So the hematopoietic stem cells, they can specialize and become erythrocytes, which are red blood cells, leukocytes, which are white blood cells, thrombocytes, which are platelets. So this is occurring in our red marrow. In the yellow marrow, we have mesenchymal stem cells, and they can also specialize into more than one type of cell. Mesenchymal stem cells in the yellow marrow, they can specialize and become fat cells, cartilage cells, or bone cells.